Welcome back to the Ready to Be Heard podcast. And today we're going to get a little bit personal, and I'm going to talk to you about my own experiences in how the things that happened in my life led me to finding my voice again. Because we've all got a voice, and not all of us choose to use that voice in the way that, for example, I do. In the way of using it and sharing it, because that's really vulnerable. It's dangerous in some sense. We might get kicked out of the tribe if we tell our story. And what will people think if we start putting it out there and acting as if people should listen to us and should pay attention to us? But there's lots of reasons that I do what I do, and how I got to this point in time. So I want to share with you that journey that I've been on for a long time. And you might be thinking I'm going to go back to 2019, to years ago, nearly 6 years ago now, when I chose to leave. But I'm actually going to go back a lot further than that. A lot further. And I'm going to go all the way back to when I was a kid, when I was 9 years old. And I'm going to go back to my parents' divorce. And my parents' divorce was, as far as I understood it, fairly amicable as divorces go. There was obviously upset, anger, not in a way that was expressed unhealthily to my understanding. And it was probably difficult in the initial stages. I don't remember my dad not living with us anymore. I don't remember that transition. I remember my dad being there, and I remember my dad not being there, but how that actually came about and when it actually occurred, I don't fully remember that bit, and maybe there's a good reason for that. But there was nothing that stands out as it being horrendous. But I do remember one evening, and it's either a Tuesday or a Thursday night, because they're the days that I go to my grandma's house. And Ben must be sleeping, my brother, he must be sleeping in my aunt's room on some sort of sofa bed thing. And I'm he's probably on the futon, that was it, the futon, everyone had one of those. And I am getting ready for bed with my grandma in her bedroom, and I think I'm on the fold-out camping bed style thing. That's what I will be sleeping on. And she's got this nautical themed bedroom. It's quite nice actually, but it's a blue. She's got her dressing table there in front of the bay window, and she's got her bed. It's metal, it's gold, it's got a big quilt over the top of it, white and blue as well. And I know she's going to talk to me. She's sat next to me, but I'm nervous. I feel nervous. I'm 9 years old. My parents are going through a divorce, and it's not that comfortable. We're not that kind of family. This is probably, I guess, the first testing point of what kind of family we are. And being 9, becoming aware of that, not at that point, but having enough of a memory to become aware of that later down the line. But I know that beyond being at my grandma's house at this point, I'm going into school crying. I get through the lessons just about, but I'm crying every day. At break time, I go to sick bay. At lunchtime, I go to sick bay. And one day I overhear Mrs. Barr, who at that point is in charge of the sick bay area, and I can hear her on the phone talking to my mum and saying, she's teary. Is there anything up? And I don't know how long that went on for. I think it went on for a fair few days, maybe a couple of weeks. And I think people are aware that there is something going on with me, with this whole scenario. But I don't think we have the awareness level of what it really is as we do now. Whether that's just my personal interpretation about it, whether parenting has changed a little bit since then, like it was a long time ago. But my grandma is about to talk to me. And it's nothing major, but I can't say much. I just can't. And it's not because I can't, because I'm stopped for any... No, I'm not in danger. But she says, she's trying to talk to me about talking about things, ironically. And she talks about the concept of, a problem shared is a problem halved. That stuck with me, if nothing else. But whatever question she prompts, I tell her it's okay. There's nothing I want to talk about. but I'll probably go into school the next day crying, I suppose. And that was some level of concern. And that wasn't just at school, rather. That was happening at home at night time a little bit too. And the reason I can talk about that now is because I've always known that happened, but I suppose I certainly haven't spoken about it on a podcast before. It is a new one that I don't think I referred to it much, if at all, with the Single Girl's Guide to Life. This was some of the work that I did through therapy. And so I learned in that experience, as good as the wisdom from my grandma was, the tiny voice inside of me did not want to give that up, did not want to give whatever safety I felt in being on my own away. It didn't talk. And skip to maybe a year later, and a completely unrelated event. We're doing what is the equivalent of year 6 SATs, but it's a private school, so they don't do SATs. I don't know if that's because they don't have to and therefore they don't do them, but we're doing end of years of some description. And we're in the gym. It's quite a nice gym. It's not like an old school wooden gym. It's got carpeted floor. It's quite a modern enough building. Well, they've modernised the inside at least, because they're all old stables that have been converted. So it's white walls, and it's small. Is there 15 of us in each class? Yeah, 15 of each. Classic private school, half the size of any normal school. 15 kids in each class, 2 classes in each year group. So 30 kids in the hall doing their end of year exams. And I've finished. I think most of us have finished, actually. We've just got spare time. And in whatever layout that there is that exists, something's going on that's causing giggling around the room. People are sort of laughing and pointing. And the teacher is picking up on this. And something's happening to one of my friends in this moment. Someone I would have called like a good friend in terms of that age. I don't speak to them anymore at all. Once I moved schools, it was a bit difficult, when you move miles away. But the person that is sat behind my friend is putting sharpenings in her hair. You could call it minor, but it's still not very nice, whatever's going on. And it's the whispers and the pointing. And the teacher clocks it. They come over and they ask what's going on. They ask why, and I won't say her name, but why is this person so upset? Because she's visibly upset. There are tears rolling down her cheeks. She's got her hands up against her cheeks, trying to sort of hide it, have it there to wipe the tears away. This is a 10 or 11-year-old girl going through this. We all know. The people that are behind, at the very least, all know and have been involved. And I can feel it in me. I can feel it in me that it's not right. I don't like it. I don't feel comfortable with the concept. So I tell the truth. The word or the name snitch would probably come up for many of you in that moment. There's always been this thing, I think, that exists where I can't, I even at 10, I'm battling with, I need to talk because I have to do the right thing. I mean, it was social suicide, not that I cared, clearly, because it was the end of year and I was moving to a different school. I really wouldn't be seeing these people. I don't think I had that level of awareness. And the word snitch was thrown around at that lunchtime towards me. Grass, maybe, snitch, bit of both. So it's interesting. I couldn't talk when it was about me. But when it came to standing up for someone else, I had enough of this. I'm just going to do it because I can't stand for it. It didn't work for me. I think my friend appreciated it. And I think the person that did it was dealt with appropriately. It's not the most, it's still not right. It's just not right. And I'm playing it down because I'm trying to make it seem I don't actually know what happened. It was so long ago. I can remember the social fallout a little bit after, but I mean, it brushed off. I don't care. I don't think it ruined my day. It probably caused an internal conflict because it was like, how's it being turned on me? And, at 10, you probably could have been cleverer about it, but you wouldn't have had that awareness. So I could have waited to speak to the teacher a bit later. But I didn't. And that's what I did. So I've always known that I had this power of using my voice, even if it didn't quite work out for me or caused a social suicide, as it were, within that. So then we jump to the point at which it's my own relationship and it's it's ending. And the reason it's ending is because I'm saying I'm not sure this is what I want. That's a whole other concept that could take forever to get through. But one of the key parts of that, as I'm trying to explain it, is that I don't think I've spoken about when I've truly been unhappy. We've had conversations at points about why this isn't working, why that isn't working, what can we improve? And I don't think it's just me that hasn't spoken. I also think it's him. I think being teenagers, late teenagers when we met at uni, and navigating our 20s at the same time, you're in relationships, working out relationships in that moment. Sure, had a few relationships as teens, but I mean, it's very different. That's the first person I've lived with. So you've got a whole other set of relationships that you're learning, which is living a life together. And we're very good at the practical side of things. We can work out who's doing what. We can work out how practically we're going to buy a house. It's great. That's fine. We can communicate in that sense. But if either of us are unhappy, we're probably not that great at communicating it. We aren't bringing things up that need talking about from his side and from my side. And I think in hindsight, not being able to talk about those things, bringing it back to the same incident as my grandma on the bed trying to speak to me, kind of led to the downfall of that relationship. And so through all the mess of undoing a relationship, of going back to a base point, there were lots of things that I had to do. I had to work out what I really wanted. I had left on the basis that I didn't think I wanted this. So it was therefore super important for me to work out what I did want. And at that point in time, I didn't know. How could I? How could I say, this is not what I want, but I do know what I mean? There was no experimentation time. I'd been with my ex from the age of 19 to 26. In hindsight, I realise, and what I advocate for on the old podcast, is that you shouldn't be in a relationship in your 20s. If you are, it's not with significant long intent necessarily, which is really hard because a lot of people are looking for that, and then it makes it seem like you're not being serious. But they are trials. They are there to be worked out. It is not something you're taught, and even if you're taught it, you can't do it without being in it. It's like podcasting. You can't learn to podcast without getting in front of the camera and actually talking. You have to be in the relationship to experience it live, with no practice, with a new thing that's come out of nowhere, that's developing, and you're growing and changing and they're growing and changing. You know, it's all happening. That's relationships. And as much as I was trying to work out what I wanted, one thing that I did come to the conclusion of, as much as that was unclear, I came to the conclusion that I could not repeat what had happened again. I could not find myself in the same position of following through very subconsciously, unconsciously it felt at times, and just going with it. I wanted to make sure that I didn't end up in the same scenario, because as much as it was the right thing to do, and I stand by it, I stand by that it was the right thing for me to do for myself and for him. He was being shortchanged based on the fact that I wasn't showing up 100% in the way that I would want to show up in a relationship. Like, I'd want to be all in, and I wasn't. So I ultimately think it was always, and I'll always stand by it, the best decision for us both. Else it would have just held both of us back. But I couldn't repeat the same. And I had to get to the bottom of what the issue was. And in some of the work that I did, I went back to the moment with my grandma and that concept, and came to the conclusion I've shared with you, which is I don't think I spoke. And in part of my personal exploration, therapy work, self-help, journaling became a thing. Deeply. Meditation, journaling, podcasts, listening, not making at that point in time. It was all to do with working out what was going on. And it was when I experienced the loneliness of being single, of being the only single person in my group. At work almost, there was hardly any of us. And not anyone that I was particularly close to going through that same experience. I had all these thoughts, I had all these feelings, but no one really to share it with. And so I realised I had to find a community where I could share it. People that would be interested to hear it, people that it could help. And so that was where the idea of the podcast came from. Yes, there was double-edged elements to it, like helping it to create my content for me, helping to streamline the process, making deeper content than was short videos that took ages to make and sometimes had some benefit, not always. So the things that I'd been exploring in my journaling, meditations, started to become the podcast. My parents' divorce and my own divorce had been the catalyst for a story worth telling, an experience worth sharing so that others didn't have to go through it. But taking those first steps was really, really tough. You're worrying about what people are going to think of you. I remember recording a few videos. I kept getting a pull to share something, anything, because everything I was learning felt so valuable. It was like, more people need to know it. The concept of the ripple effect was shared with me by Jay Shetty, and this idea that you want people to pass the stories on. You want them to tell the same lessons and learnings in their own context, from their own perspective, in their own application, so that more and more people can, if you want to call it an awakening, that could be woken up from just doing whatever in life and not really living it to the full. Sometimes I think it's better. It's the kind of matrix concept, isn't it? Like, are you going to wake up or not? I mean, sometimes I think it's easier not being woken up, but some of us don't have a choice. Or we have it really early on. I'd rather early than late, but better late than never. And obviously, I'm dealing with a very sensitive topic that is personal. So I'm still a teacher as well. So there's two elements there. So whatever I say still has to be done in a very diplomatic and fair way, in a way that doesn't feel like airing dirty laundry. And that's something that I really stand by in any content that we make. We are not airing dirty laundry. We are making sure that stories are told accurately and fairly. This is somebody else's life that, in theory, I make implications about or suggestions about. They are welcome to contact me if there's ever an issue. But I'd like to think that I've never spoken about them or the situation in a way that would be offensive to them. And that I've always maintained that concept of, well, what would they think hearing this? Or what would a parent of the children that I teach rather, think hearing this? And that was an element that really, it wasn't a problem, but my school didn't have a problem, but they didn't want me being identifiable. I wasn't talking about anything controversial. I've never spoken about anything that's risque, let's call it that, publicly, even though now I teach PSHE lessons that would go into topics that year 9s learn about at a certain point in year 9, kind of thing, if you catch my drift, interestingly. But they still wanted a detachment. They didn't want the association, just in case. This is what schools have to deal with. It's public. It's the same as any big company maybe not wanting to be associated with you. Just in case is the issue. So that was really hard. There was me trying to reclaim my voice, a voice that I had probably not had from a kid for whatever reason, of choosing silence over conversation at 9 years old. Trying to reclaim my voice and doing it very awkwardly, because talking on camera when you are not used to it is not fun. I used to whisper at the beginning. It used to be like I was trying to be softly and wonderful, and now we just don't care. And then I've got other people around me to think about, whether that's professionally, whether that's personally. And someone literally saying, please use a different name, something that doesn't make it so easy to find you because your name's really easy to find. I'm like, okay, no problem. I'll do my best. I'll just call myself a coach and it'll be okay. But the truth is, doing all of that changed everything for me. My divorce was the thing that led me to go, I cannot do this again. It had gotten bad enough for me to not keep continuing the way that I had. And not just that, but I managed to turn it into that positive, to turn it into an experience that I could share with the world and make something of. Which means that, as bad as it might be deemed to go through a divorce in your 20s after only a year of marriage, insert whatever judgment that you feel that you want to apply here, there's always a lesson to be learned. There's always something there. And hey, I'd rather jump out within a year than stay for 5 just because I didn't want to look like I'd left after a year. But more and more people can realise that there's not a shame in that. That there's a life after that. That there's a story to be shared of positivity and something good. And so now I use my voice to stand up still, just like I did for my friend in the exam hall. And I don't fear the consequence. I didn't fear the consequence then, and I've always been good at that. But I've let that fire in my belly, that righteous kind of value that I have. I don't think it's right that was happening. And I don't think it's right that women feel that they have to be in a relationship because of what other people tell them. And I think there's plenty of things that are not right in this world that people can stand up for, whether it's me or someone else that has that passion for that thing, that wants to stand up and say, well, hang on, no. Let's have a conversation and let's start looking at this from other perspectives and let's see what this is really about. That's what my divorce led to. My divorce led to owning my voice, because owning your voice, owning your story changes everything. Because you're standing strong in it. No matter what the hard bits were, the difficult bits, the challenging bits, the downright shit bits. Because it was hard. It is hard. Life is hard. But we want to just put this perfect image out there. But it isn't perfect. But owning your story allows you to take charge of it again and not let it stop you. So on reflection of all that, obviously a very personal story in some respects. I hope you feel I've dealt with that appropriately, that it's not been too much of an overshare. Everything that's in it is past. It has gone. There is nothing that I'm still processing within that process, that experience, that means that I can't touch on it now. But if you had full permission to speak your truth today, to stand up for something that you believe in or that you think is right over something that is wrong, what would it be? And I invite you to explore that however you choose to do that. Journaling, meditation, whilst out on a run. And if you want, you can keep it personal and private to you, or you can share in my DMs. That is entirely up to you. But this is why I help people create their podcasts. This is not podcast for podcast's sake. This is not podcast just for marketing. This is podcasting for the people that have something to share, that have gone through something life-changing, individual, really difficult, and had enough realization to be able to own it, to want to own it, to want to share it in a way that can help other people. Yeah, it means being at the forefront. Yeah, it means being centre of attention for a little bit, but it isn't about that that's driving them. It's about having impact. And so if you need any help in getting your podcast set up, there are plenty of options for us to work together. All you need to do is drop me a DM on Instagram and we can have a chat about how we can get your story out there. Start sharing what it was that you learned, what you went through. Get you seen, get you heard, and start changing the way the world thinks, one podcast at a time.